this one, I just want to mix this. So let's first get a kick patch back here. And then kind of start thinking about how we want to place all these things in the mix. So we've got a drum group here. We don't really use these hi-hats, so we can delete those. We can just deactivate this stuff for now, hide deactivated tracks just to get a bit of a cleaner overview. And then kind of let's start grouping some stuff. So this is kind of all more or less just percussion stuff. And then I usually like to have my kick and my snare kind of extra. And have some, well, these are all hi-hats here. So let's maybe start with the hi-hats, just listen to those, kind of compress them together a bit maybe. Because it can kind of help them sit in the same room if we just... let's just use the dynamics. No, let's use compressor plus, actually, why not? On the glue mode. Just kind of threshold down a little bit. Or a lot for now. And just have this kind of move along with these, bounce along with these a bit. Okay, then this texture here needs some EQ. Something like this maybe. Then maybe I want to add just a little bit of room to this, or just to glue it all together, kind of like we did with the snare layers. Just get a simple blur in here and just have something that kind of reacts to all the drums at once. So we can just, first of all, no, this should be in the drum group, not in the hi-hat group. So get the snare in here. And also get some the hi-hats here. Maybe put them over before the blur and just clip these all down a bit. Because I don't really want as many transients in here, I want mostly just the roominess. And maybe combine this with another convolution. See if we can find an impulse response that sounds decent. Actually, we can just put a hi-hat in here. So let's get a hi-hat sample and kind of make it sound like it's like a hi-hat ringing with all the drums, almost like it's resonating with the drums in the room. This nice metallic kind of resonance to all the sounds. Kind of top layer, it's quite sharp, sort of resonant. That's maybe not ideal for mixing, but we can turn this down quite a bit. Make this shorter. And less now. Just get this nice drum room going here. And then also a tiny bit of kick, but really not much. Let's take the lows out how we can do. So let's listen to this here. And a feeling of kick in here. So this overall, this percussion, it's maybe a bit of limiting. And then also some clipping. Yeah, let's just do this with over, where we kind of turn the threshold down here. Or do we just want to turn? Let me think. I think it's mostly this one hi-hat that's kind of causing these high peaks here. This thing here. I think this thing just needs to be turned down a bit. So let's just get a limiter. And just make sure it doesn't peak quite as high. Now that one. Okay, so let's listen. Maybe try panning some of these a bit, and this to the left a bit. This to the left. Have some nice kind of spread out throughout the room, I guess. This also needs some limiting. Just kind of taking some of these transients down a bit. Mostly less so for headroom and really just because I prefer the sound of them being flattened out a bit. But it also gives us more headroom, of course. So let's definitely need some. Let's just bounce this out because this transient split is gonna use a lot of CPU. So I just want to kind of deactivate this, instead have it as audio here. And then I kind of maybe want to sidechain this to kick and snare. Just to kind of make it move with the drums a bit more. So let's just actually let's use this, and then in the sidechain effect we're going to place an FX layer and get kick and snare in here, because then we can have two different sidechain sources, which is kind of neat. So audio receiver, drums, kick master, and then do the same for the snare here. Drum, snare, master. And then we can place a transient shaper in here, so we can kind of control the sidechain movement a bit more. So I really want these to duck down all the way for the transients of kick and snare. Then turn attack all the way down. And kind of just turn release in a way where it sounds kind of nice, like it's moving nicely with kick and snare. Kind of like a tier. Because that way we can have this a bit louder. And then now we can either bus compress this on the drum bass, which is something I sometimes like to do, but in this case I kind of want to leave the kick and the snare alone. So what I want to do is instead, first of all, this snare could use a little bit more tops, I think. Just something like this. And then I want to kind of pseudo bus compress this by placing a compressor plus on these drums and then routing the kick and the snare into the sidechain FX. This way, this compressor will be reacting to the percussion, the kick and the snare, but it will only be affecting the sound of the percussion. So I'm gonna get an FX layer here. Get the dry, then we've got the kick in here, and then we'll have the snare in here. Audio receiver. Another audio receiver. Okay. And let's just see. So we can definitely use some kind of transient shaping on that snare, because I really want these to duck down for the snare. No, transient shaper. I don't really care too much how they react to the kick. It's not that big of a deal, but I really want these to kind of go away for the snare. And then also I only really need these to react to the highs, so I don't need these to react to the body of the kick. So this kind of thing. Then just turn the threshold down. Just to glue. Preserve the attacks a bit better. And then listen in context. This could use some more. Maybe some bass EQ on this here as well. It's not having any effect because it's on the wrong channel. Give these percussions their kind of range to sit. And now let's take a look at the kick, because I kept this as a synth patch quite deliberately, because now I can listen in the context of my song and kind of adjust all these envelopes to make the sound a bit nicer. Because this is a bit too punchy for me, so I want this pitch envelope to be a bit quicker maybe. So let's just listen and adjust this a bit. You know, something a bit lower, a bit thumpier. By just making this pitch envelope go down quicker. Trying to kind of find the sweet spot. Maybe adjust the transient a bit, make this kick a bit longer maybe. This a bit more transient. Brighter. Add high pass here for the transient. See how we can shape this further. This maybe. I was kind of experimenting here. Just getting a kick that sits a bit nicer in the mix. Without really needing to EQ or anything, just by purely really tweaking it at the source and getting it right there. So yeah, I think that's everything this needs for now, unless I am forgetting about something. Let's maybe look at it on an oscilloscope, just so we see how we are in terms of kind of headroom and stuff. I prefer looking at oscilloscopes much to prefer to looking at these meters here, because it really gives you the volume over time better. Yeah, I feel like this would use a bit of bus compression. So let's get compressor plus here. Set it to glue mode, auto timing all the way down for now. Ratio up, knee down. Just for setting the attack, I'm gonna over exaggerate this first. Really get that nice punch here. make it a bit less sensitive to the lows. The timing faster for the highs. And maybe add a little bit of one of these hardware EQs here, because why not? Just giving it brightness boost. And let's limit this thing here, this noise. And I think then that's it. The rest would really have to be decided in the context of a song. But yeah, I think that's the drum course. I think it's over. Unless I think of something else I want to add. This is the last lesson, I guess. I hope you learned a lot, found some new useful techniques. Of course, you don't do all of this for every song. You just do some of these things for some songs, and sometimes you don't need them and sometimes you do. But it's kind of good to take the time to really add some texture to your drums and kind of polish this up. And I think you can use these techniques to create very different sounds to this. So you can basically use the same workflow just by making different synthesis choices, different sample choices and so on, get very different sounds from this. And I hope, I like to think that this is a very efficient workflow. So like, I try to get as much control over my drums as possible without really locking myself in too much, so I can't really change stuff anymore, or without spending too much time on it and kind of forgetting about the songwriting part. So I hope this is a nice middle ground of kind of really doing your own sound design, creating unique textures and so on, but also just getting on with it, quickly writing these variations that we've got here and so on. And yeah, I hope you've been going along, have kind of been trying everything yourself. If you haven't, that's really the main bit here. So if you've just watched these videos, really just use all these techniques, get used to them, experiment with them, try to improve them, try to find your own variations on them, because otherwise you won't learn too much from this. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for getting the course. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know if you have any feedback. Cheers. Bye.